If you stand before the Giza pyramid complex at dusk, as the deep red sunset blankets those colossal blocks of stone weighing tens of tons, a profound sense of awe and smallness washes over you. For centuries, humanity has asked itself the exact same question. How on earth did people in ancient times, armed with nothing more than primitive copper and stone tools, manage to raise wonders that defy time itself? And the most familiar answer, repeated over and over in high school textbooks, in blockbuster Hollywood movies, and in the imaginations of millions, has always been this image: an utterly tyrannical kingdom, hundreds of thousands of backbreaking slaves, ragged, starving, dragging themselves through the scorching heat of the Sahara Desert, the sharp, whipping crack of overseers' lashes slicing through the air, and upon heavy wooden sledges, exhausted bodies collapse, only to be buried right into the mortar and stone of the very structures they were forced to build. It's a tragic picture, full of tears, and fiercely familiar. But there's a major problem with this picture. It is completely wrong. Not just wrong in its details, but fundamentally wrong about the nature of history itself. Attributing the monumental labor of building the pyramids to a nameless class of slaves is an act of intellectual laziness. It stems from the lens of modern societies, where people assume that massive structures can only ever be forged through extreme violence and oppression. The historical truth, distilled from revolutionary archaeological excavations over the past 3 decades, is precisely the opposite. The people who dragged those 2.5-ton blocks up into the sky were not chained prisoners. They were free farmers, skilled artisans, organized engineers, and above all, they were citizens fulfilling a sacred obligation to the cosmos and to their living god, the pharaoh. Today, we are going to strip away the dust of time together, step inside the forgotten city of the Giza builders, to witness how one of humanity's greatest civilizations actually operated. To understand this truth, we have to travel back in time to the 1990s. Back then, American archaeologist Mark Lehner and his team kicked off a massive excavation on the Giza Plateau, not far from the walls of Khafre's pyramid. According to long-standing historical tradition, people believed the area surrounding the pyramids was just a barren wasteland, where the bodies of exhausted slaves were hastily tossed and buried after dropping dead from fatigue. But what the earth beneath Giza kept hidden defied every scientific prediction. Instead of finding impoverished mass graves with bones deformed by whippings, the archaeologists unearthed a complete city, a sprawling ancient settlement, meticulously planned, known today as Hayt el Ghurab, or the Wall of the Crow. This wasn't a slave concentration camp. This was a sophisticated ancient industrial metropolis. The city featured distinct neighborhoods, pottery workshops, massive bakeries capable of feeding thousands of people every day, brewing areas, and a smartly designed drainage and sewage system. And most importantly, they found the cemetery of the builders. Right from these tombs, history was rewritten. When anthropologists analyzed the remains of the workers buried here, they found zero evidence of systematic abuse or death caused by brutal forced labor. Instead, what did they see? They saw the spines of men and women worn down from heavy physical labor, hauling giant rocks, pulling sleds. That makes complete sense. They were construction workers. At the same time, scientists also uncovered staggering medical evidence. Their broken bones were carefully splinted and cast using wooden slats and linen. Many of them survived severe injuries and fully recovered. Some skeletons even showed evidence of crude but successful ancient cranial surgeries. Just sit with that for a moment. A society that views its workers as mere slaves would never waste time, resources, and medical care to splint, operate on, and tenderly nurse injured laborers unless those human beings held core value to the community. They weren't wretched, coerced outcasts. They were national assets, the backbone of a tightly and efficiently organized state machine. So, if they weren't slaves, who were they? And who paid them? Ancient Egyptians operated under a system historians call public labor service, or the corvée system. In this system, there was no concept of private business opposing state business. All land, resources, and labor belonged to the cosmic order led by the pharaoh. Yet, this system differed radically from slavery in one crucial way. It was seasonal and generously compensated. Ancient Egyptian civilization lived and breathed to the rhythm of a single river, the Nile. From July to October every year, the Nile would flood its banks, fed by distant highlands, spreading a rich, fertile layer of silt across the valley. During this window, agricultural activity ground to a complete halt. Hundreds of thousands of farmers couldn't work the fields. If you left them sitting at home doing nothing, it would spell economic and social disaster, famine, unrest, and total chaos. And that is precisely where the organizational genius of the Egyptian state came into play. The state mobilized this idle workforce during the flood season to carry out grand national projects, building temples, digging canals, and grandest of all, the pyramids. In exchange for their labor through those few months of the flood, what did the state provide? Not currency in the modern sense, but the highest-tier survival necessities of the era: wheat, onions, garlic, dried fish, and above all, beer. Archaeological records show that every single builder at Giza received a remarkably generous daily ration, around several thousand calories a day, packed with nutritious bread and several liters of vitamin-rich light beer. For an ancient Egyptian farmer, joining the pyramid project wasn't a punitive sentence. It was a golden opportunity to keep their families fed and secure through the harshest season of the year. Beyond that, the work carried immense spiritual weight. In the worldview of the ancient Egyptians, the pharaoh wasn't just a political ruler. The pharaoh was the living incarnation of Horus on earth, the sole entity with the divine power to maintain Ma'at, the order, justice, and balance of the universe. If the pharaoh died and failed to transition to the afterlife and be reborn as Osiris, the cosmic order would collapse, plunging Egypt into eternal darkness and chaos. Therefore, building a tomb for the pharaoh wasn't forced labor. It was an act of safeguarding the survival of themselves and their families against the chaotic forces of the cosmos. They labored with the absolute religious conviction that they were actively building eternity. Now, let's look at how this colossal machine actually ran on the ground. Building a 6 million-ton structure with over 2.3 million stone blocks, like Khufu's Great Pyramid, required way more than just religious zeal. It demanded peak logistics and human resource management. For decades, direct frontline documentation from the work sites was missing. But that changed in 2013, when a team of archaeologists discovered a cache of papyrus documents at the port of Wadi al-Jarf on the shores of the Red Sea. Among them was the Journal of Merer, a leather and papyrus logbook dating back to the 27th year of Pharaoh Khufu's reign. Written by Merer, a middle-ranking official heading a crew of roughly 40 to 200 elite professional sailors, this document offers a vivid, almost surreal look into the day-to-day operations of pyramid building. Merer meticulously logged every single detail: where his crew went, what they did, how many stone blocks they hauled each day. We learned that premium limestone blocks were quarried at Tura, sitting right across the Nile River. Merer's crew used massive, heavy-duty wooden barges to load blocks weighing anywhere from 2 to 15 tons, navigating complex canal systems and the Nile to dock right at the foot of the Giza Plateau. The workforce management was organized into strict scientific hierarchies. Laborers were broken down into crews, squads, and massive brigades. Each brigade carried proud, collective names reflecting team spirit, such as the Friends of Khufu, Vigorous is Khufu, or Perfect is Khufu. They didn't just work, they competed against each other. Archaeologists found masons' marks carved directly onto stones inside the pyramid's interior, hieroglyphs bearing the names of the work teams that hauled them. Just like modern construction workers signing their names onto the final steel beams of a skyscraper, ancient Egyptian builders left their personal stamps, cementing their existence right inside a world wonder. The land transportation of heavy stones was an absolute triumph of physics, too. Contrary to the Hollywood myth of wooden rollers, which would be completely useless on soft desert sand because the wood would just sink and lock up, the Egyptians used a simple yet genius physical discovery: water. Wall paintings found in the tomb of Jehuti-Hotep depict a colossal statue being dragged on a heavy wooden sledge. The magic trick lies right at the front of the sledge: a man standing on the prow, pouring water directly onto the sand right in the path of the sled. Modern science has tested and proven that when you pour an optimal amount of water, roughly 2 to 5% moisture content, into dry sand, the sand grains bind together via capillary action, cutting the static friction of the sled in half. As a result, the manpower needed to pull a heavy stone block dropped by half, a simple, elegant engineering solution tailor-made for the natural desert environment. When we step back to look at the grand tapestry of history, our entire mental image of the Giza pyramids completely transforms. They are not monuments to cruelty, blood, and the tears of utterly broken slaves. They stand as the ultimate testament to social organization, engineering brilliance, spiritual unity, and the voluntary, powerful labor of a civilization that mastered the harsh environment of the Nile. The story of the pyramid builders is ultimately the story of us. It reminds us that history's greatest feats were never built on fear. Fear can only ever breed destruction or temporary patched-together fixes. Only belief, mutual respect, and a grand shared purpose can create things that endure for thousands of years, defying both time and space. Next time, when you look at an image of a pyramid under the glaring desert sun, don't just picture a single pharaoh sitting high on a golden throne. Think of Merer and his sailors out on the Nile over 4,500 years ago. Think of the artisans carefully splinting a wounded co-worker's leg. Think of the warm scent of freshly baked bread and the lively laughter over cool jugs of beer down in the city of Hayt el Garab after a grueling day under the sun. They weren't nameless ghosts of history. They were real, flesh-and-blood human beings who proudly built eternity with their own two hands and their own sweat. And that is the truly magnificent story hidden behind those giant blocks of stone. Thank you for joining us on today's journey to decode the past. If you found a deeper, fresh perspective in this video, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and share to help us keep unearthing the forgotten pages of human history. See you next time, and take care.